The rain was relentless that day, a cold gray curtain soaking through my jacket as we trudged deeper into the forest. Each step squelched in the mud, the air heavy with the scent of wet pine and decay. My best friend walked ahead, his hood pulled tight, oblivious to the way the trees seemed to lean in watching us. I don't know why I kept going. Maybe it was the thrill of an empty trail, the promise of solitude. But something felt wrong, like the woods were holding their breath, waiting for us to make a mistake. The autumn leaves blazed in hues of crimson and gold, a stark contrast to the dreary Tuesday afternoon. My friend and I had driven 40 minutes to this remote trail, drawn by the allure of having the entire forest to ourselves. No cars in the lot, no hikers, just us and the endless drizzle. I loved the rain, the way it painted the world in muted tones, but today it felt heavier, like it was trying to drown something unspoken. We'd barely started when my friend froze, his eyes narrowing as he peered through the skeletal branches. "Look over there," he said, his voice low, almost swallowed by the patter of rain. "Doesn't that look like a face?" I squinted my heart, giving a small, uneasy thud. About 20 feet away, half hidden by the trees, something pale and unnatural gleamed against the bark. It wasn't a person, it couldn't be. The shape was too still, too wrong. As we crept closer, the truth unraveled. A cheap plastic mask, the kind you'd find in a dollar store nailed to a tree. Its empty eyes stared blankly, rain streaking down its surface like tears. It wasn't on the trail, tucked away, as if meant to be missed, blending into the gnarled wood and sparse leaves. My friend grinned, snapping a photo. "This is creepy as hell," he said, but his excitement made my stomach twist. Why would someone nail a mask out here in the middle of nowhere? I wanted to keep moving, to shrug it off as a prank, but my friend was already circling the tree, his fingers brushing the mask's edges. "Wait," he said, his voice sharp. He tugged the mask free, revealing a folded piece of paper taped inside. The note was scrawled in jagged, uneven letters. Number 1. Go behind this tree and keep walking until you find number 2. My mind screamed to leave, to abandon this bizarre game. But my friend's eyes lit up with reckless curiosity. "This has to be some park event," I said, trying to convince myself more than him. But he shook his head. "No way. This is too far off the path. Kids wouldn't come out here." The rain was picking up, soaking the note, but he was already moving, stepping into the dense undergrowth. Stay focused. Don't let the forest swallow you. The words echoed in my head as we pushed deeper, the trail fading behind us. The forest grew thicker, branches clawing at our jackets, the air damp and suffocating. My friend led the way, his flashlight cutting through the mist, each step pulling us further from safety. After what felt like an eternity, maybe 50 or 60 feet, we found it. Another mask, half buried in the dirt, its hollow gaze staring up at us. My friend knelt, brushing away mud to reveal another note. This one was vaguer, just coordinates scratched in the same jagged hand, pointing us deeper into the woods. My pulse quickened, a cold dread settling in my chest. This isn't a game. Someone wants us here. We found 3 more masks, each one more unsettling than the last. One hung from a low branch, swaying gently as if placed moments ago. Another was wedged between rocks, the note inside smeared with something dark mud, or maybe something worse. Each note pushed us forward a breadcrumb trail leading to nowhere. The forest seemed to close in the trees, taller, the shadows sharper. I could feel eyes on us, though I saw nothing but rain and bark. My friend laughed it off, but his voice was tighter now, less sure. By the time we reached the 5th mask, pinned to a gnarled oak, the note was simple. See you soon. Those 3 words hit like a punch, stealing the air from my lungs. Who's watching us? Who knows we're here? We laughed nervously, trying to break the tension. But the forest was no longer silent. Faint sounds, twigs snapping, leaves rustling, echoed around us, too deliberate to be the wind. I wanted to run, to drag my friend back to the car, but he insisted we finish the hike. The rain was a downpour now, blurring the world into a gray haze. Hours later, we stumbled back to the parking lot, soaked and shaken. Another car was there, parked so close to mine, I could barely open the door. It hadn't been there before. My friend cursed climbing in, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we'd brought something back with us. That night, alone in my apartment, the unease grew. I lived by myself, the silence usually comforting, but now it felt oppressive. After a football game, I was brushing my teeth when a faint sound, a low, rhythmic thud, came from outside. My heart stopped. Don't look. Just ignore it. But my feet moved before my brain could stop them, drawn to the living room window. I pulled back the curtain, and my blood ran cold. 5 figures stood on my front lawn, their faces hidden behind those same cheap plastic masks. They swayed in the moonlight, their movements jerky, almost ritualistic, like a dance no human should know. My phone trembled in my hand as I dialed the police. My eyes locked on the figures. They weren't just standing. They were circling their heads, tilting as if they could see me through the glass. Run. Hide. Do something. But I was frozen, my breath shallow, watching as they moved closer to the house. Every few minutes, one would dart to the door, slamming their body against it, the vibrations shaking the floor beneath me. The doorbell rang in frantic bursts, each chime a knife to my nerves. I stumbled upstairs, locking myself in my bedroom, peering through the blinds. They were still there, their movements growing wilder, more frenzied, as if celebrating some twisted victory. The rain had stopped, but the air felt heavier, charged with something malevolent. I counted the seconds, each one stretching into eternity, until red and blue lights flashed in the distance. The police arrived, and the figures scattered like shadows, vanishing into the night. 2 officers chased them, but they returned empty-handed, their faces grim. I gave my statement, my voice shaking, but there was no evidence, no footprints, no signs of forced entry. "Call us if they come back," the officer said, her tone flat, like she didn't believe me. I wasn't satisfied. But what could I do? The next day I bought a Ring camera, its cold lens my only defense against the unknown. A year later, they haven't returned, but I still check the footage, every night, my heart pounding as I scan for those masks. They're out there, waiting. The thought haunts me, a constant whisper in the back of my mind. Was it a prank, some elaborate Halloween stunt? Or did we stumble into something darker, something that followed us home? The memory of those masks, their empty eyes staring through the rain, clings to me like damp earth. I tell myself it was nothing, that I'm safe now. But every night, as I lock my doors, I feel them watching their promise, echoing in the silence. See you soon. The forest held its breath that night, as if it knew something I didn't. A secret woven into the rustling leaves and the shadows that clung to the trees. 10 years ago, when I was just a high school kid, the world felt like a playground, and nature was my escape. I loved the outdoors, hiking through dense woods, swimming in icy lakes, or just breathing in the crisp air of autumn. The way the leaves turned fiery red and gold, the way the wind carried a chill that made your skin prickle. It was magic. But that magic turned into a nightmare during a school camping trip, a memory that still haunts me every fall, like a ghost that refuses to fade. I was 16, buzzing with the kind of reckless energy only teenagers have. My parents had signed me up for a weekend camping and hiking program in the mountains, a school-organized escape from classrooms and textbooks. I convinced a handful of my closest friends to join, lured by the promise of skipping school on a Friday and the thrill of exploring the wild with no adults breathing down our necks. The trail was beginner-friendly, winding through a forest of towering pines and maples, their leaves painting the ground in shades of crimson and amber. By 5:30 p.m. on the first day, we'd set up camp, 15 students, 3 teachers, and a sprawl of tents under a sky streaked with the last light of dusk. The air smelled of pine and damp earth, and I felt alive, like I was part of something bigger than myself. That night, my friends and I shared a tent, our faces lit by the glow of our Nintendo DS screens. Pokémon X and Y had just dropped, and we were obsessed, trading tips and battling in hushed voices. The teachers had enforced a strict 10 p.m. lights out policy, but we didn't care. The thrill of defiance was intoxicating our laughter, barely contained, as we ignored the rules. One of the teachers caught us her flashlight slicing through the tent's fabric, her voice sharp as she ordered us to turn off the games. We grumbled, complying just enough to avoid further trouble. But sleep didn't come easy. The forest outside was alive with sounds, rustling leaves, distant hoots, the occasional snap of a twig. I told myself it was just animals, maybe the wind, but a nagging unease settled in my chest, like the forest was watching us. The next morning, I dragged myself out of the tent, exhausted, but ready for another day of hiking. The crisp air and the rhythm of our steps shook off the sleepless night, and by midday, I was back in my element, the forest's beauty pulling me in. But as night fell, my friends hatched a plan that would change everything. One of them eyes, glinting with mischief, suggested we sneak out to play our DS games, away from the teacher's watchful eyes. I hesitated, the memory of last night's reprimand still fresh, but the allure of adventure was too strong. Break the rules. Feel the rush. We waited until the camp was quiet, the teacher's snores mingling with the forest's hum, and slipped out our footsteps, muffled by the carpet of fallen leaves. We trekked a good distance from the campsite, far enough that our laughter wouldn't carry. The forest was darker than I'd expected, the moonlight barely piercing the canopy. We found a clearing with a semicircle of fallen logs perfect for our illicit gaming session. The air was cold, biting at my fingertips as I powered on my DS, the screen's glow casting eerie shadows on the trees. For 30 minutes, it was perfect. Our voices low, our excitement high, the world reduced to pixelated battles and shared grins. This is what freedom feels like. I thought my heart liked, despite the chill. But then the forest went silent. No crickets, no wind, just a heavy, unnatural stillness that made my skin crawl. Something moved in the trees. A rustling, deliberate and slow, broke the silence. We froze, our DS screens dimming as we strained to listen. My heart pounded a primal instinct, screaming that we weren't alone. I scanned the darkness, expecting a bear or a deer, but what emerged was worse. A man stepped into the clearing, his silhouette sharp against the faint moonlight. He was in his 40s, average build, with slicked back dark hair and clothes that looked too nice for the woods pressed slacks, and a button-up shirt, though they were stained with dirt. His face was clean-shaven, but his eyes, they were empty, like he was looking through us, not at us. He didn't speak, didn't acknowledge us. He just walked to our semicircle of logs and sat down right in the middle as if he belonged there. My friends and I exchanged glances, our breath shallow, our bodies tense. Who is this guy? I wanted to ask, but my voice caught in my throat. He stared at the ground, motionless, his hands resting on his knees. The air grew heavier, the silence suffocating, as if the forest itself was holding its breath. We sat there, paralyzed for what felt like hours, but was probably minutes. Finally, one of my friends mouthed, "Let's go." We nodded silently, counting to 3 before standing as one. The man stood too, mirroring our movement with an eerie precision. He didn't look up, didn't speak, but his sudden motion sent a jolt of fear through me. Run. Now. We bolted our feet, crunching through leaves, branches snagging at our clothes. I glanced back, and there he was, jogging after us, not sprinting, not shouting, just moving with a calm, relentless purpose. His face was still blank, his eyes fixed on us, and that lack of emotion was more terrifying than any scream. The forest seemed to close in the trees, looming like silent witnesses to our panic. My lungs burned, my legs screamed, but I kept running, the others close behind. We reached the campsite, diving into our tent and zipping it shut with trembling hands. My heart was a drum in my chest, each beat echoing the man's footsteps. We sat in silence, listening for any sign of him, but the forest was quiet again. Too quiet. We didn't sleep that night, jumping at every rustle, every shadow. By morning, the sunlight felt like a lifeline, but the fear lingered. We hiked out that afternoon, scanning the trees for any sign of him, but he was gone. We never told the teachers, too scared of getting in trouble, too shaken to put words to what we'd seen. Don't think about it. Just move on. 10 years later, every autumn brings it back, the chill of the air, the crunch of leaves, the image of that man's empty eyes. I've hiked countless trails since, but none feel the same. The forest, once my sanctuary, now holds a shadow I can't shake. Was he just a lost hiker, a drifter with no ill intent? Or was he something else, something the woods didn't want to claim? I don't know. And that uncertainty is what keeps me awake when the leaves start to fall. October's amber leaves burned against the sky, their brittle edges whispering secrets of decay as they fell. My husband and I stood hand in hand, the crisp air kissing our cheeks, celebrating a love that had weathered 15 autumns. But that day, a shadow crept into our story, one that would claw at our peace and leave scars that time couldn't heal. The pumpkin patch sprawled before us, a patchwork of orange and gold, under a sky streaked with clouds like spilled ink. It was our first wedding anniversary's echo, a weekend meant for quiet joys after the revelry of the previous one. My husband's eyes sparkled as he lifted a misshapen pumpkin, its lumpy surface oddly charming, and we laughed our breaths, mingling in the chilly air. The scent of apple cider donuts wafted from a nearby stall, warm and sweet, wrapping us in a cocoon of autumn's embrace. A local band strummed lazily, their notes drifting over the crowd like falling leaves. We sipped hot coffee, its bitterness grounding us, and shared a donut crumbs dusting our jackets. It was perfect until he suggested a hike. I've never been one for hiking. The thought of trudging through tangled woods, swatting at bugs, or dodging unseen creatures made my skin crawl. But my husband lived for it. The crunch of leaves underfoot, the wild pulse of nature calling him. His smile was a quiet command, pulling me toward the unknown. There's a trail nearby, he said, his voice soft but insistent, eyes gleaming with the promise of adventure. It's not far, and it's not too tough. Just a quick walk to stretch the day. I hesitated, my boots sinking slightly into the muddy earth of the patch, but his enthusiasm was a tide I couldn't resist. I nodded, and we left the warmth of the crowd behind the band's music, fading as we drove toward the trail. The parking lot was a ghost town. When we arrived, a barren stretch of gravel under a sky now heavy with gray. A sign loomed at the trailhead, its bold letters screaming, "Closed for renovations. Reopens May." My stomach twisted, a cold knot forming. "We should go back," I said, my voice barely above the rustle of leaves skittering across the ground. But my husband's gaze was fixed on the trail, his jaw set. "Look." He pointed his finger, tracing the shapes of 3 cars parked haphazardly at the lot's edge. "Others are here. It's not a big deal. Just a quick look." His logic was flimsy, but his excitement was contagious, a spark that ignited my reluctance. "Step over the line, just this once," his eyes seemed to say. Against my better judgment, I followed him, climbing over the chain-link fence that barred the path. The metal was cold, biting into my palms, and the no trespassing signs glared like accusing eyes. Each step onto the forbidden trail felt like a transgression, the air growing heavier, the forest's silence pressing against my ears. We walked for a few minutes, the trail soft underfoot, cushioned by decades of fallen leaves. The trees stood tall, their branches clawing at the sky, their shadows pooling like ink. My husband's pace quickened, his eyes scanning the woods with a hunger I didn't understand. Then he stopped, his hand tightening around mine. "Look at that," he whispered, pointing to a structure just off the path. It wasn't some crumbling relic swallowed by time. It was new, a portable shack, its clean lines jarring against the wild chaos of the forest. Its white walls gleamed faintly, a stranger in this ancient place, like a tooth pushed into rotting gums. "Maybe it's for the workers," I said, my voice thin, trying to rationalize its presence. But the shack felt wrong, its pristine surface hiding something I couldn't name. My husband's curiosity pulled him forward, and I trailed behind, my heart thudding against my ribs. As we approached, the air grew thick, the scent of damp earth mingling with something sharper, oil maybe, or metal. The shack's door was closed, its single window glinting like an unblinking eye. "Stay close, don't look away," my instincts screamed, but my husband was already moving toward it, his steps deliberate. "It's like a trailer," he said, his voice low, as if afraid to disturb the silence. No plumbing, no AC, just a place to rest. I nodded, but my eyes darted to the trees, their branches swaying, though no wind stirred. Then we heard its muffled voices, sharp and jagged, spilling from inside the shack. They weren't casual, not the banter of workers on a break. They were angry, each syllable laced with venom, rising and falling like a storm about to break. My blood ran cold, my legs rooting to the ground. We should go, I whispered, my voice barely a breath. But my husband motioned for silence, his finger pressed to his lips. Don't make a sound, just listen. The voices grew louder, a tangle of shouts and curses, though the words were indistinct, swallowed by the shack's walls. My husband crept closer, his body low, and I followed my pulse hammering in my throat. We ducked beside the shack, pressing ourselves against its cold metal side, the surface slick with condensation. The voices were clearer now. 2, maybe 3 men, their tones raw with rage. My husband, taller than me, edged toward the window, his breath shallow. I couldn't hear the words, only the fury, a low growl that vibrated through the air. What are they fighting about? I wondered, my mind racing with images of construction crews, park rangers, or something. Worse, something that didn't belong here. Then my husband moved, cupping his hands against the window, his face inches from the glass. Time slowed, the forest holding its breath. His body stiffened, his eyes widening, the color draining from his face like water from a broken dam. Something's wrong. Something's terribly wrong. He ducked down his movements, sharp, almost violent, and grabbed my arm. We need to go. Now. His voice was a blade cutting through the air, trembling with a fear I'd never heard from him. Before I could ask, he was pulling me, his grip bruising, dragging me back toward the trail. My feet stumbled over roots, the forest blurring around me, the shack's presence looming like a predator at our backs. What did you see? I gasped, my voice cracking. But he didn't answer. His eyes, fixed ahead, wild with terror. We ran the trail, stretching endlessly, the trees closing in their branches, clawing at my jacket. My lungs burned, each breath a knife. But my husband's fear was a chain binding us, pulling me forward. The parking lot appeared our car, a beacon in the gray light. I barely had the door shut before he floored the gas, the tires screeching as we sped away. He kept checking the rearview mirror, his hands trembling on the wheel, his face a mask of dread. What was it? I asked again, my voice shrill, but he shook his head, his lips pressed into a thin line. He saw something he can't unsee. The silence between us was a living thing, heavy and suffocating as we drove home, the forest's shadow clinging to us. That night, the warmth of our home felt hollow. I pressed him, my voice soft, pleading, but he begged me to stop. "Don't ask," he said, his eyes haunted, his hands shaking as he poured a glass of water he didn't drink. "Promise me you won't bring it up again." I fought the urge to push, to demand answers, but the fear in his voice stopped me. I promised, though it burned like betrayal. What could be so terrible that he can't speak it? Days turned to weeks, then years, but the man I loved never returned fully. He'd lie beside me at night, his body rigid, waiting until I slept to slip away. I'd find him in the living room, staring at the door, his eyes hollow, as if expecting something to burst through. He blamed work stress, anything but that day. But I knew. The shack had taken something from him, something vital, and left a wound that wouldn't heal. 15 autumns have passed, and October still carries the weight of that day. The leaves fall, their colors vivid, but they no longer feel like a celebration. I watch my husband, his smiles forced, his sleep stolen by nightmares he won't share. What did he see in that window? The question gnaws at me, a splinter under my skin. But I keep my promise. I hold on to the hope that one day he'll find peace, that the shadow of that shack will loosen its grip. Until then, I carry the weight of his silence, and the forest's secrets remain buried, waiting in the dark. The air was sharp, slicing through my jacket, as my wife and I ventured deeper into the autumn woods, the leaves above us burning crimson against a gray October sky. I didn't know then that we were stepping into a nightmare, one that would cling to my thoughts like damp fog refusing to lift. Something was waiting in those trees, something that didn't belong, and it saw us long before we saw it. The fall season in the Northeast United States is a spellbinding time when the world transforms into a canvas of fire and shadow. My wife and I, seasoned hikers, live for these moments when the air cools, the crowds thin, and the forest opens its secrets to those brave enough to wander. We'd spent weeks exploring local trails, but as October deepened, we craved something wilder, something untouched. That's why we chose an unmarked trail, a hidden path known only to those who dared to stray from the beaten routes. My wife, with her uncanny knack for navigation, led the way, her boots crunching through the carpet of fallen leaves. I followed my heart light with the thrill of discovery, unaware of the darkness creeping closer. The forest was alive, its pulse thrumming in the rustle of branches and the distant cry of a crow. The scent of damp earth and decaying leaves filled my lungs, grounding me in the moment. We hiked for hours the trail, winding through dense thickets and open glades, each step pulling us deeper into the wilderness. By midday, my legs ached, and my wife's cheeks were flushed with exertion. We found a clearing, a perfect circle of grass, ringed by towering oaks, their branches clawing at the sky. It felt like a sanctuary, a place designed for weary travelers to pause and breathe. We sank onto 2 weathered tree stumps, the wood cold against our thighs, and shared a protein bar. The silence was heavy, broken only by the occasional drip of moisture from the leaves above. Close your eyes for a moment, I thought, and let the forest wrap you in its quiet embrace. But something was off. The air felt charged, like the moment before a storm breaks. As we packed up, to continue, a sound pierced the stillness, a rustling sharp and deliberate just beyond the trees. My wife froze her hand, tightening around her water bottle. I tilted my head, straining to listen. The noise came again, erratic, like something heavy dragging through the underbrush. My pulse quickened, my mind racing through possibilities. A deer, a fox, maybe a bear. The northeast woods are home to creatures that can tear you apart if you're careless. I whispered to my wife, "Let's wait. It might pass." But her eyes, sharp and curious, were already scanning the trees. She's always been braver than me, driven by a need to understand the unknown. "It's not the wind," she said, her voice low. "Something's out there. Don't move," my instincts screamed, but her curiosity was a force I couldn't resist. We crept forward, our boots sinking into the soft earth, each step deliberate to avoid snapping twigs. The rustling grew louder, more frantic, as if whatever was out there knew we were coming. My heart pounded in my chest, a drum beat echoing in my ears. The air grew colder, the scent of pine now laced with something sour, like sweat or fear. We pushed through a wall of thorny brush, the branches clawing at our jackets. And then we saw her. A woman standing alone in the heart of the forest, her presence a violation of everything natural. She was young, maybe in her mid-20s, with blonde hair cascading over her shoulders and blue eyes that glinted like ice in the dim light. She wore a white dress, pristine and flowing, reaching her knees, a garment absurdly out of place in the muddy wilderness. Her feet were bare, caked with dirt that climbed up her calves like creeping vines. She moved erratically, her body swaying, her arms flailing as if caught in some invisible current. Her lips moved muttering words we couldn't catch, interspersed with sharp bursts of laughter that sent chills down my spine. I stood rooted, my breath shallow, as if breathing too loudly might draw her attention. My wife, ever bold, took a step closer, her eyes narrowing. "She's not right," she whispered, her voice trembling with a mix of pity and unease. The woman's movements were unnatural, almost animalistic, like a marionette jerked by unseen strings. Her head tilted at odd angles, her bare feet slapping against the earth as she hopped from spot to spot. "What is she doing out here?" my mind screamed. She didn't belong, not in that dress, not in this forest, not in this world. I wanted to grab my wife and run, but her gaze was locked on the woman, her curiosity a chain holding us in place. We watched in silence, the forest holding its breath around us. The woman's mutterings grew louder, a jumble of groans and giggles that made my skin crawl. I thought of stories my grandfather told me as a child, tales of lost souls wandering the woods, their minds broken by grief or madness. Was she one of them? The thought lodged in my chest, heavy and cold. My wife, undeterred, called out softly, "Hello, are you okay?" Her voice cut through the air sharp and clear. The woman didn't react, her movements growing more frenzied, her hands clawing at the air. I grabbed my wife's arm, my fingers digging into her sleeve. "Let's go," I hissed, but she shook me off, her eyes never leaving the woman. "Stay still," I zigged silently. "Don't draw her attention," my wife called again. Louder this time, her voice firm. "Do you need help?" The words hung in the air, and then, like a switch had been flipped. The woman froze. Her body went rigid, her head snapping toward us with unnatural precision. Her blue eyes locked onto mine, and I felt a jolt like a current running through my bones. Her face was beautiful, but wrong, her features too sharp, her expression devoid of humanity. Then, without warning, she hissed a guttural, animalistic sound that tore through the silence like a blade. "Run," my mind screamed, but my legs wouldn't move. She turned and sprinted into the trees, her bare feet pounding the earth with impossible speed, her white dress a ghostly blur against the dark forest. My wife lunged forward, shouting, "We can't just leave her." I grabbed her, pulling her back, my heart hammering. "She's not right," I yelled, my voice breaking. But my wife was already moving, chasing the woman's fleeting form. I followed my breath, ragged the forest closing in around us. Branches whipped at my face, the air thick with the stench of decay. My wife was fast, but the woman was faster, her movements defying logic. She wove through the trees with the grace of a predator, her laughter echoing back to us, sharp and mocking. After minutes that felt like hours, my wife stopped, gasping, her hands on her knees. "She's gone," she panted, her face pale. I looked around the forest, silent once more, but the weight of those blue eyes lingered, watching from somewhere unseen. We turned back, retracing our steps to the trailhead. My wife's determination hadn't faded. She insisted we report what we saw. At the ranger station, we spilled the story, our words tumbling over each other. The ranger, a grizzled man with weary eyes, listened, but offered little comfort. "You shouldn't be out there," he said, his tone sharp. "Those woods aren't meant for wandering." He promised to search, but warned us that people often saw things in the forest, things that didn't add up. Days later, he called to say they'd found nothing. No footprints, no white dress, no trace of a woman matching our description. They checked missing persons reports, but no one fit. My wife returned to the woods, alone, driven by a need to understand, but found only empty trails and unanswered questions. I lie awake at night. Her face burned into my mind, those blue eyes that hiss the way she moved like something not quite human. The forest had shown us something it didn't want, found something that slipped through the cracks of reality. Was she a ghost, a lost soul, or something worse? I don't know. All I know is that she was there, and she was real. And somewhere in the depths of those woods, she's still running. Deep in the marrow of my bones, I felt it a pull toward the unknown, a whisper from the wild that promised secrets buried in the heart of the forest. Every fall, my friends and I abandon the sun-scorched flats of Nevada for the untamed beauty of New York's Adirondack Mountains. The air there bites with a crispness that makes your lungs ache. and the trees blaze in shades of amber and crimson like a painting smeared with fire. Louise, our guide, is the kind of man who could wrestle a bear and walk away whistling. His maps are meticulous, his instincts sharper than the knife he carries. For over a decade, we've trusted him to lead us through the wilderness, and he's never faltered. That year, he promised a gentle trek, a chance to soak in the sights without the brutal climbs of past trips. We arrived at our cabin under a sky bruised with dusk, the scent of pine and damp earth thick in our nostrils. As we pored over Louise's map, the lines seemed to pulse, as if the forest itself was alive, waiting. Feel the weight of this moment, I thought, because something out there is watching. The next morning, we set out cameras slung around our necks, laughter echoing through the trees. The trail was a ribbon of dirt, winding through towering pines, their needles carpeting the ground in a rust-colored shroud. Every step felt like a step into a story, one we didn't yet know the ending to. Something was wrong with the air. It thickened, clung to my skin like damp cloth, urging me to turn back. Louise stopped abruptly, his eyes narrowing as he scanned the horizon. "That doesn't look right," he muttered, pointing to a shape that didn't belong. A silhouette jagged against the soft curves of the forest. We veered off the trail, our boots crunching through underbrush, hearts pounding with the thrill of discovery. Then we saw it, a church ancient, and weathered its steeple stabbing the sky like a broken bone. A cross, blackened by time, clung to the spire, swaying in the wind as if it might fall. The structure was an anomaly, a relic in a place where no human should have built. My pulse quickened, not from awe, but from a primal unease, as if the forest itself resented this intrusion. "Step closer," my curiosity urged, "but don't trust what you see." We approached the air, growing heavier, the scent of decay mingling with pine. The church's walls were warped, the wood splintered, as if clawed by something desperate to escape. Louise's hand hovered over the door, his usual confidence flickering. "This is no hiking trail." "Find," he said, his voice low. I wanted to agree to suggest we turn back, but the pull was too strong. "You're already here," a voice in my head whispered, "so why not see what's inside?" The door groaned as we pushed it open, revealing a darkness that seemed to breathe. Inside, time stopped, and the air tasted of dust and forgotten prayers. The church was a husk, its interior, a snapshot of a world long dead. Rows of wooden benches, warped and splintered, led to a small altar at the far end, where a massive cross loomed its surface, pitted with age. Melted candles littered the floor, their wax hardened into grotesque pools, as if they'd burned out in a panic. My flashlight beam danced across the walls, catching glints of something, metallic nails, maybe, or something older. Between the benches, I found a Bible, its pages so brittle they crumbled at my touch. I slipped it into my pack, a trophy of our discovery, though my fingers tingled with unease as I did. This place remembers, I thought, and it doesn't want us here. We whispered theories about who built this church, why it stood alone in the wilderness. A cult, a forgotten settlement. Every answer felt wrong, like trying to solve a puzzle with missing pieces. Louise paced his boots, scuffing the floorboards, and I noticed his eyes darting to the shadows, as if he sensed something we didn't. Listen closely. My instincts screamed, because the silence is lying. Then a hollow thud broke the trance. Louise froze his foot on a floorboard that sounded different, muffled, like it hid something beneath. My heart lurched. You're about to find something you can't unsee, a voice warned, and I knew we were no longer just explorers. The floor opened like a mouth, and the darkness below swallowed my courage whole. Louise shoved the altar aside, revealing a trap door with rusted hinges, its edges caked with dirt. The air grew colder, sharper, as if the earth itself exhaled a warning. We shone our flashlights into the hole, the beams cutting through a void that seemed to stretch forever. The ground below was maybe 8 feet down, a rough square of stone walls etched with symbols, spirals, crosses, shapes that twisted the eye. I didn't wait for permission. Jump, my mind commanded, and I dropped into the chamber, landing with a thud that echoed like a heartbeat. The air was thick, heavy, with the scent of damp stone and something metallic like blood. The symbols glowed faintly under my light, not painted, but carved their edges sharp, as if freshly cut. Touch them, a part of me urged, but my hand froze, mid-air, repelled by an instinct I couldn't name. Louise's voice called from above. Frantic, but I was lost in the trance of discovery. At the far wall, I saw it a small hole, boarded up with planks nailed tight. Heat pulsed from it, warm and unnatural, like breath from a sleeping giant. Break it open, my curiosity demanded, and I tore at the boards, splinters, biting my hands. The hole beyond was black, endless, swallowing my flashlight's beam. You shouldn't be here. The warmth seemed to whisper, and I felt the weight of something watching. I tore into the darkness, and it stared back, hungry. The planks gave way, revealing a tunnel that exhaled heat, a sickly warmth that clung to my skin like sweat. My flashlight revealed nothing but more darkness, the beam fading into a void that felt alive, pulsing. Louise shouted for me to stop, but I was beyond reason, caught in a trance of questions. Why was this here? What did the church hide? Crawl inside, a reckless part of me urged. But the tunnel was too narrow, my shoulders scraping the stone as I tried. The heat grew stronger, almost suffocating, carrying a faint hum, like distant voices, chanting. I backed away, my heart hammering, and let my friends pull me up. We took turns peering into the tunnel, each of us silent, as if speaking would wake something. Later at the cabin, Louise told a ranger who dismissed it as a collapsed mine sealed for safety. But his words felt hollow. Mines don't breathe heat. Churches don't hide secret rooms. Think about it. My mind looped. What if someone was trapped down there, screaming? When the mine fell, the Bible on my shelf now feels heavier, its pages whispering questions I can't answer. Was it a mine or something older, something the church was built to guard? You'll never know. The memory anchors, but the heat will follow you. Every fall, I eye that steeple in my dreams, and I wake with the taste of dust in my mouth, wondering what we left behind. The forest was my sanctuary, but that morning it turned against me. The air was crisp, laced with the scent of damp moss and autumn leaves, as I walked the familiar path behind my house. My dog trotted beside me, her ears perked her breath, puffing in the chilly September air. I thought I knew every inch of these woods, every tree, every bend of the creek. But as the sun climbed higher, casting long shadows across the trail, I felt it a prickle on my neck, like unseen eyes boring into me. I should have listened to that instinct, the one screaming to turn back. Living in a small tourist town has its perks, especially in late September, when the summer crowds vanish, leaving the trails empty. I'd hiked these woods for 17 years, my dog by my side, her leash loose as we wandered through the forested area behind my home. It was a routine I cherished early mornings with my computer job, waiting for me at night, giving me daylight to escape into nature. The creek ran parallel to the trail, its waters murmuring over smooth stones, a sound that usually calmed me. But today, my dog's demeanor shifted. Her hackles rose a low growl rumbling in her throat, her eyes fixed on something across the water. I froze, my hand tightening on her leash. "What do you see, girl? What's out there?" I scanned the opposite bank, expecting a deer, or maybe a stray raccoon. But the woods were still too still, the kind of quiet that presses against your eardrums. Then, movement, swift, deliberate. A man burst through the undergrowth, splashing through the creek with reckless speed. Water sprayed around him, catching the sunlight in a fleeting shimmer, but his presence was anything but bright. He stopped on the far bank, his silhouette stark against the trees. Middle-aged, maybe with a slight paunch, and clothes that looked like they'd been slept in for days. His head tilted, and even from a distance, I could feel his gaze lock onto me. My dog's growls grew sharper, her body rigid, ready to lunge. "Stay calm. Don't move." I tried to soothe her, my voice barely above a whisper, but my heart was hammering. The man didn't move either, just stood there, staring. The creek between us felt like a flimsy barrier, its current too weak to stop him if he decided to cross again. I crouched behind a cluster of bushes, pulling my dog close, her warmth grounding me. But then he spoke, his voice low and gravelly, cutting through the silence like a blade. "I see you." The words were slow, deliberate, each syllable sinking into my bones. I held my breath, hoping he was talking to someone else, something else. But he repeated it louder, this time his eyes never leaving my direction. "I see you. I see you. I see you. Run. Now." The command screamed in my mind, but my legs felt like lead. The man's voice grew more insistent, a chant that seemed to pulse with the rhythm of my own fear. My dog whimpered, her growls turning to anxious whines, and I realized hiding wasn't enough. He was moving again, splashing back through the creek, his steps purposeful, water churning around his knees. I stood my chest heaving and stepped out from the bushes, puffing out my chest in a desperate bid to seem unafraid. He was closer now, so close I could see the yellowed glint of his teeth as he grinned a wide, unnatural smile that didn't reach his eyes. My dog went wild, barking furiously, her leash straining in my hand. He stopped inches away, his breath heavy with the sour tang of unwashed skin. That smile widened, and for a moment I thought he'd speak again, repeat that chilling phrase. Instead, he leaned in his face so close I could see the dirt caked in the lines of his skin, and let out a scream, a blood-curdling, animalistic howl that tore through the forest. My dog lunged, nearly pulling me off balance, and I stumbled back, my heart in my throat. Then, just as suddenly, he laughed a jagged, broken sound and turned sprinting back across the creek. He stopped on the other side, standing still again, watching me with that same empty grin. I didn't think. I just acted, my phone already in my hand, dialing the sheriff, a friend I'd known for years. The signal was weak, but it went through, my voice shaking as I explained what had happened. "Stay where you are," the sheriff said, his tone calm but urgent. "Keep him in sight if you can." I didn't want to, but I couldn't let this man disappear into the woods behind my house, not when he knew where I was. My dog stayed close, her growls a constant warning as I watched him across the creek. He didn't move, didn't speak, just stood there, his silhouette blending into the shadows as the minutes dragged on. When the sheriff arrived with 2 deputies, relief flooded me, but it was short-lived. They approached the man, slowly, hands raised, voices steady, trying to talk him down. He didn't respond, didn't even flinch, until one of them stepped closer. Then, like a switch had been flipped, he charged, tackling the sheriff with a force that sent them both to the ground. The deputies reacted fast, pinning him down, but he kept screaming a raw, unhinged sound that made my skin crawl. They found a kitchen knife on him, its blade glinting in the sunlight, and no identification, just a man with no name, no story, only that knife and that scream. The sheriff later told me they'd taken him to a state institution, suspecting mental instability. No one in our small town knew him, an outsider, in a place where everyone knows everyone. I tried to move on, to reclaim the woods as my sanctuary, but every rustle of leaves, every ripple in the creek brings his voice back. "I see you." It echoes in my dreams, a relentless reminder that he could return, that he might still be out there watching. My dog sleeps closer now, her warmth, my only comfort against the fear that lingers, a shadow that refuses to fade. The forest was too quiet that day, as if it was waiting to swallow me whole, its shadows whispering secrets I wasn't meant to hear. 3 years ago, I craved solitude, a way to escape the chaos of life. My job was a pressure cooker, my relationships a tangle of stress, and my mind a battlefield of anxiety. Hiking was my refuge, a ritual to reset my soul. The crunch of leaves underfoot, the scent of pine, the way the trees stretched toward the sky, it grounded me. Every fall, I'd lose myself in the trails near my home where the leaves turned to fire and the air carried a crisp promise of renewal. But one hike on an unmarked trail, recommended by my friend Justin, turned my sanctuary into a nightmare that still claws at me. Justin was a fellow outdoor enthusiast, the kind of guy who could navigate a forest blindfolded. He'd told me about a hidden trail 45 minutes from my house, unmarked, but well-trodden. "It's not on any map," he said, his eyes gleaming with excitement. "But you'll see the path. Just bring some markers to find your way back." I trusted him. I'd hiked enough to know my limits, and the idea of a new adventure was irresistible. Go explore. Find peace. I told my parents and my then partner where I'd be packed my backpack with water snacks and small flags with crosses to mark my path, and drove out one crisp October morning. The forest welcomed me with open arms, its canopy a mosaic of red gold and orange, the air sharp against my skin. The trail was just as Justin described, a faint ribbon of dirt and grass winding through towering pines and maples. I walked slowly, savoring every detail, the way the sunlight dappled the ground, the faint hum of insects, the cool breeze brushing my face. I planted my flags near distinctive trees and logs, each one a breadcrumb to guide me back. My mind wandered, untangling the knots of my life, work-stress arguments, the weight of decisions I hadn't made. Nature was my therapist, and for an hour I felt lighter, freer. But then the forest changed. The hum of insects stopped. The breeze died. The air grew heavy, like a storm was brewing, but the sky was clear. Something's wrong. Listen. I made a sound to check my hearing, and it echoed back sharp and solitary. The silence was unnatural, a void that pressed against my ears. I shook it off, blaming dehydration. I sat on a fallen log, sipping water, nibbling a granola bar, the taste of oats and honey grounding me. But the silence persisted, and a chill crept up my spine, unrelated to the autumn air. I decided to head back, following my flags. The first few were exactly where I'd left them, their crosses fluttering like tiny beacons. But halfway back, things went wrong. A flag was stuck to a tree. I didn't remember marking its fabric caught in the bark, like it had been torn from my hands. Another was planted in the middle of the path, not near any landmark. My heart quickened. Did I place them wrong? I tried to recall each step, but doubt gnawed at me. The forest felt different now, the trees closer, their branches reaching like skeletal fingers. I pressed on my eyes, scanning for familiar signs, but the flags kept appearing in wrong places. One tied to a low branch, another half buried in the dirt. My phone was useless. There was no signal, and when I triggered my car alarm, no sound reached me. The forest was darker now, the sunlight fading, as if the day had aged prematurely. After 50 minutes, I saw 3 flags clustered together, their crosses glowing against a massive shape covered in moss and leaves. I approached, expecting a boulder, but my breath caught when I realized it was no rock. It was a shroud, small and ancient, its wooden walls swallowed by vines and decay. The air around it was thick, sour, like something rotting beneath the earth. Turn back. Now. But curiosity pulled me closer, a dangerous lure I couldn't resist. As I stepped forward, a sharp crack split the silence, followed by a faint squeak. The shed's door creaked open, revealing a sliver of darkness within. My heart pounded, my palms slick with sweat. Run. Don't look. But my eyes locked on the door, and there it was, a hand pale and bony emerging from the shadows. Its fingers curled slowly, beckoning me closer, as if inviting me into the shed's depths. The sight was wrong, unnatural, like a puppet controlled by something unseen. My legs trembled, but I couldn't move, trapped by the hand's silent command. The forest seemed to lean in its silence, now a scream in my mind, urging me to obey. Break free. Run. I snapped out of it, stumbling backward, my backpack catching on a branch. I tore free and sprinted, the flags blurring past as I raced toward safety. The forest was alive now, branches snapping behind me, though I didn't dare look back. My lungs burned, my vision tunneled, but I kept running, the sound of my car alarm finally piercing the air. I reached my vehicle, fumbled with the keys, and locked myself inside, my breath ragged. As I sped away, I glanced in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see that hand reaching from the shadows. The forest stared back, silent and unyielding. I stopped at a rest stop, my hands shaking, as I tried to process what had happened. Was it a prank? Someone moving my flags to mess with me? Or was that hand something else? Something the forest hid in its depths. I'll never know. But the experience broke something in me. I haven't hiked alone since sticking to crowded, well-marked trails. Every fall, when the leaves turn, I feel that silence again, that beckoning hand, and I wonder what would have happened if I'd stepped closer to that shed. The fog clung to the earth like a shroud, its icy fingers curling around my heart as I stepped into the forest. I was no stranger to dread. But that day, on Brad's birthday, the woods would teach me a fear so raw it would carve itself into my bones, leaving me forever changed. I've never been one for the wild. The idea of trudging through mud, swatting at insects, or stumbling over roots made my skin crawl. Nature to me was a chaotic force, unpredictable and unkind. But Brad, he was different. His eyes lit up at the thought of trails and trees, his broad shoulders seeming to carry the forest itself. He loved me enough to pull me into his world, and I loved him enough to try. Over the year we'd been together, I'd softened to his passion, joining him on gentle hikes that ended with warm drinks and laughter. They were short, tame, perfect for a city girl like me. So when he begged me to hike with him on his birthday, late October's chill already biting the air, I couldn't say no. Step into the unknown for him just this once, his smile urged. I agreed, though a flicker of unease sparked in my chest. The morning of his birthday dawned wretched. A thick fog blanketed the world, so dense I could barely see my own hands. Rain mixed with wet snow, stinging my face as we stood at the trailhead. "This is miserable," I muttered, pulling my jacket tighter, the cold seeping through my gloves. Brad's grin was undeterred, his eyes gleaming with excitement. "It's just a little weather," he said, his voice warm, coaxing. "It's an easy trail, I promise. We'll be back before you know it." His confidence was a tide pulling me forward, though my boots sank into the muddy earth with each reluctant step. Why did I agree to this? The forest loomed its trees skeletal and bare, their branches clawing at the gray sky. The air smelled of damp leaves and something sharper, like rust or regret. We walked for what felt like hours, the trail narrowing, the fog thickening until it swallowed the world. My frustration grew a hot ember in my chest. "This isn't easy, Brad." I snapped, my voice sharp, over the patter of rain. He turned his smile, faltering, but before he could respond, my foot caught on a root. Time slowed, the world tilting as I stumbled. My body pitched forward, then down, tumbling down a steep cliff. Rocks bit into my skin, branches snapped under my weight, and pain exploded in my leg as I hit the bottom. I'm broken. The realization hit as I lay there gasping, my leg twisted at an unnatural angle. Blood seeped through my torn jeans, warm and sticky, and the pain was a living thing clawing at my nerves. Brad's voice echoed from above, frantic, his silhouette barely visible through the fog. "Are you okay?" He shouted, his words trembling. I tried to answer, but the pain choked me, tears burning my eyes. "Stay there," he called. "I'm getting help." His footsteps faded, leaving me alone in the darkening woods. He's gone. I'm alone. The reality sank in heavy and cold. The trail was deep, the nearest help miles away. The fog pressed closer, the air thick with the scent of wet earth and pine. My watch was shattered, its face cracked, leaving me untethered from time. The pain pulsed, a relentless drumbeat, and as the sun sank, the forest grew darker, its shadows pooling like ink. I dragged myself to a nearby tree, my hands clawing at the rough bark, the effort sending fresh waves of agony through my leg. I leaned against it, my breath ragged, my body shivering in the October chill. How long will it take? The thought looped in my mind, a cruel mantra. Minutes bled into hours, or so it seemed, the darkness swallowing the last traces of light. My flashlight, miraculously intact, cast a weak beam, its light trembling in my shaking hands. The forest was silent, too silent, the kind of quiet that feels like it's holding its breath. Something's out there. My heart thudded, my eyes scanning the shadows, seeing nothing, but feeling everything. Then I unheard it, a low growl, deep and guttural, vibrating through the ground. No, please no. My breath caught my body, freezing as I fumbled with the flashlight. The beam swept across the trees, catching two glowing eyes, bright and unyielding, staring from the darkness. It's not real. It can't be real. But it was. A black bear emerged, its massive form, a shadow against the fog, its fur glistening with moisture. My heart stopped, my mind screaming as it moved closer, each step deliberate, its breath a hot cloud in the cold air. I clutched the flashlight, its beam shaking, illuminating the bear's eyes, dark, endless, like voids that saw through me. This is it. This is how I die. The bear stopped mere feet away, its bulk towering over me. I could smell its breath, a rank mix of earth and decay, feel the heat of it on my cheek. My body shook, tears streaming down my face, but I couldn't move, couldn't scream. Stay still. Don't breathe. My mind clung to fragments of advice, but fear drowned them out. I closed my eyes, accepting the end, waiting for the claws, the teeth. But nothing came. The bear stood there, its breathing heavy, its presence a weight that crushed me. Minutes stretched, eternal, unbearable. Then, impossibly, it sat its bulk, settling onto the ground, its eyes still fixed on me. Why isn't it moving? My mind raced, searching for reason, finding none. Then, as suddenly as it appeared, it rose and lumbered away, its steps fading into the night. I sobbed, my body collapsing against the tree, the pain in my leg roaring back to life. Relief and terror warred within me. The bear's absence as unsettling as its presence. Why did it leave? The question looped a trance that held me captive. Then faintly voices, human voices, cut through the fog. Flashlights pierced the darkness, their beams sweeping the cliff. Down here, I croaked my voice. Weak, I flashlight waving like a signal. Two men rappelled down their faces, grim but kind, their hands steady as they splinted my leg. The pain was unbearable, each movement a fresh hell, but they lifted me, their makeshift pulley, groaning as they hauled me up. The forest watched silent as I left it behind. At the hospital, the doctors confirmed the break, my leg encased in plaster, my body bruised, but alive. Brad was there, his face pale, his apologies endless, but I couldn't look at him. He left me there. The thought festered, and weeks later, I ended it. Our love, no match for the shadow of that day. I swore off hiking the forest, now a place of nightmares. Its silence, a scream I couldn't unhear. The bear's eyes haunted me, their gaze a mystery I'd never solve. Was it pity, instinct, something else? Know your limits. I tell myself now, a lesson carved in pain. I was lucky. You might not be. The bedroom was silent, save for the faint patter of rain against the window. I lay flat under the boy's bed, my heart racing with the thrill of hide and seek, unaware that Something was watching from the other side of the glass. Her face, pale, twisted, wrong, would haunt me for years. A shadow I could never outrun. It was a muggy summer afternoon when I agreed to babysit the 7-year-old son of a coworker. I wasn't exactly thrilled about kids never had been, but I needed the extra cash, and the boy seemed easy enough. He was a bundle of energy, wide eyes, and endless questions, his sneakers scuffing the grass as we tossed a ball in his backyard. The air was thick with the scent of cut grass and blooming jasmine, the kind of day that felt alive, vibrant. We laughed, chased each other through the sprinkler, his giggles cutting through the humid haze. But then the sky darkened, clouds rolling in like a warning, and a sudden downpour drove us inside. The house was cozy, cluttered with toys and family photos, a safe haven from the storm outside. Or so I thought. Stay calm, I told myself. It's just a kid and a game. Inside, the boy's mood shifted, his energy turning restless. He sulked on the couch, kicking at a stray Lego. I racked my brain for something to keep him entertained, something to bring back that spark in his eyes. Then it hit me. Hide and seek. It was my favorite game as a kid, a way to turn any house into a maze of secrets and surprises. His face lit up when I suggested it, his earlier grumpiness forgotten. "I've never played before," he said, bouncing on his toes. I explained the rules. One hides, one seeks, no cheating. To make it fun, I spun a story about us being explorers in a forgotten castle searching for hidden treasure. His eyes widened, and he clapped his hands, already plotting his first hiding spot. Let the game begin, I thought, unaware of the nightmare waiting to unfold. We played a few rounds, his laughter echoing through the house as he found me in easy spots behind the couch in the pantry. Too easy, he teased, his voice bright with triumph. I grinned, loving his enthusiasm, but decided to step up my game. For my next turn, I crept upstairs to his bedroom, the wooden steps cool under my socks. The room was a mess of superhero posters and stuffed animals, the air heavy with the scent of crayons and damp laundry. I slid under his twin bed, the carpet rough against my elbows, the space tight, but perfect for hiding. I lay there, my breathing slow, listening for his footsteps. The rain drummed harder now, a steady rhythm that drowned out the world. Stay still, I told myself. He'll never find you here. I heard him downstairs, his voice high and excited. Ready or not, here I come. His footsteps thumped drawers, opening giggles spilling out as he searched. I smiled, picturing his determined little face. But then, as I shifted to get comfortable, my eyes caught something outside the window. A shadow, stark against the rain-streaked glass, unmoving. My breath caught my body tensing. It wasn't a trick of the light. It was a woman, pale, her face pressed close to the pane, her eyes dark and hollow like pits in a skull. Her hair, wet and matted, clung to her cheeks, and her lips were parted in a silent snarl. She didn't see me, not yet, but her presence sent a chill through my bones, colder than the storm outside. "Don't move," my mind screamed. "She can't know you're here." I lay frozen, my heart hammering so loud I feared she'd hear it. The woman tilted her head, her fingers brushing the glass, testing the lock. My mind raced with stories I'd heard as a kid, tales of strangers lurking in quiet neighborhoods, watching, waiting. Was she one of them? A thief? Something worse. Her movements were deliberate, her eyes darting as if checking for witnesses. She pressed harder against the window, her nails scraping the frame, the sound faint but piercing. I wanted to scream, to run, but the boy was still downstairs, oblivious. Protect him. I thought the weight of responsibility crushing me. I couldn't let her see him. Couldn't let her get inside. The woman leaned closer, her breath fogging the glass, her face twisting into something almost inhuman. My stomach churned, bile rising in my throat. She tugged at the window, her movements growing frantic, her shoulder jerking as if she meant to break through. I pictured her climbing inside, her shadow falling over the boy's room, her hands reaching for him. Get out now, my instincts urged, but my body refused, paralyzed by fear. Then, just as suddenly, she stopped. Her head snapped to the side, as if hearing something, and she vanished into the rain, her form swallowed by the darkness. I lay there, trembling, my mind replaying her face, those eyes that snarl the way she moved like a predator. Seconds later, the boy's voice broke the silence. "I found you," he shouted, diving onto the floor beside the bed. I flinched, my scream catching in my throat, startling him. His eyes widened, confused, but I forced a smile, my voice shaking. "Hey, buddy, how about ice cream?" I said. My words rushed. I grabbed his hand, pulling him downstairs, my eyes scanning every window, every shadow. The house felt different now. Its warmth tainted the walls, too thin to keep out whatever was outside. I hustled him to the garage, my hands fumbling with the car keys, the rain soaking us as we climbed inside. I didn't look back, didn't dare, but I felt her eyes on me, watching from somewhere in the storm. At the ice cream shop, I sat the boy down with a cone, his chatter a distant hum as I texted his mother. My fingers shook as I typed, spilling the story, the woman, the window, the terror. She called the police, her voice tight with panic when we spoke. They met us at the shop, the boy blissfully unaware, licking chocolate from his fingers. I described the woman, her pale face, her matted hair, the way she moved with purpose. The mother's face drained of color. She didn't know anyone like that. The police searched the house, found no signs of a break-in, no footprints in the mud, nothing. The woman was gone, a ghost in the rain. Months later, her face still haunts me, lurking in every dark window I pass. The mother thanked me, said I did the right thing, protecting her son, but guilt gnaws at me. Should I have called the police sooner? Confronted her? The questions spiral unanswered. The house has cameras now, but the mother's thinking of moving the memory of that night too heavy. I don't sleep well anymore. My dreams filled with her face, her eyes searching for me. She's still out there, I think, waiting for another window, another chance.